Hello, this is Lisa Harrison, and today is Monday, the 16th of July, 2012. And today I'm joined by fellow Aussies Max Igan and Santos Bonacci. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for asking us on, Lisa.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for joining me. I've been looking forward to an Aussie chat, essentially. I feel that probably as a result of our geography, we have quite a unique perspective on the world. It's easy for us to feel like we're on the outside looking in a bit, I think. And wanted to talk to the two of you in particular because I know that you're both out there putting out a lot of information. And like me, your audience is predominantly American, I'm assuming, because I know mine is. So I wanted to know what you guys both thought about where Australia stands in terms of this awakening. You know, how awake are we compared to the rest of the world? Because you both get an opportunity to interact with and correspond with people from all over the world. And if we are lagging, what would it take? Because I think for each country, it takes something different. You know, it takes something that really, confronts the culture of a country to get them to wake up. I mean, for example, with Iceland, that's what seems to have brought that country together and woken them up en masse was the issue of dealing with this so-called global financial crisis and bailing out the bankers. That seems to be what stimulated a mass awakening and a collective hand-holding almost across that country. And it feels from here like we're looking at an awake nation now. And so before I sort of drag this out too long, what's your perspective on where we sit in terms of how awake we are compared to the rest of the world? And is there a particular thing that you think would really kick off a knee-jerk reaction in Australia? Whoever wants to go first.
Look, I think that we are lagging in the wakefulness. I really do. I mean, but it depends on where you are as well. There are certain pockets of the population in Australia that are awake. There's a lot of awake people around here where I live, the Northern Rivers. But again, most of them are only really half awake. You know, they're kind of aware that something's up, but they either don't quite know what it is or they don't really want to face it. And as far as the cities go and things, I mean, they're very, very asleep in the cities. I mean, I often call Australia apathralia because we have a very apathetic population, and you can't blame them for being that way. They're just trained to be that way. You know, it's a lucky country, no worries, everything's okay, just lay back, watch the football, have a beer, have a barbecue.
We're too comfortable.
Yeah, we're very comfortable, you know. We don't have overpopulation here. We've got 22 million people in Australia, the same as Greater New York. And we've got a country the size of the United States, you know, so we don't have a lot of people here. We don't have a lot of overpopulation here. As far as the catalyst that it might take to wake people up, I've been hoping that it'll be coal seam gas because Australia is a desert nation. The most valuable resource in this country is water. And here we have the government that is destroying the water table in order to support the economy. And everyone's struggling, so the economy isn't doing very well. And people have to really step back from the whole thing anyway and realise that the economy is actually fiction. We just made it up. Mm-hmm. It's just numbers on a screen. It doesn't really mean anything. You know, what's real is the people and the nation. And I really think that people have forgotten who and what they are. And I've been talking a lot about trust, and Santos knows about trust and trust law and the relationship that actually exists between our government, which is a trust agreement. You know, and I think that's the solution. Realising that if they're coming and damaging the water table, if they're bringing gas companies onto your land and the water's becoming polluted and all of this stuff's going on around us, the only way it's happening is through breach of trust by the government because they're public trustees that hold the nation for us. And that's the perspective that we need to look at it from. Julia Gillard a couple of months ago, or 6 weeks ago, said on TV when she was talking to the gas companies that they need to understand they don't own the resources and that we, the government, hold the resources and the nation in trust for the sovereign people. She actually said this.
Do you think she meant it?
Well, the fact is that she said it. So she's telling you that there's the solution, folks. She's saying, look, I'm a lawyer. I mean, Julia Gillard's a lawyer. How she could even be a politician, how that's legal, I don't know, but she's a lawyer. So she's caught in that system. She's already sold her soul to the devil. She's made consensual contractual obligations to the bar. She's in there. And she's telling us the only way you can deal with this problem is if you people realise who and what you are and realise that we, the government, are simply public trustees.
It also sounds like a position of weakness too, from her point of view. It's like abdicating any responsibility for that the gas companies are in a more powerful position than she is.
Well, of course she's advocating responsibility because the responsibility lies with the people. It's just that the people don't know it. You know, the whole system's convoluted and people haven't been educated into who and what they are. And I'm hoping that coal seam gas will jar people enough to realise that this is important because this is the water. This is a spring-fed nation. All we've got is the Great Artesian Basin. If that gets polluted, we've got no water in this nation. And that's a very, very important issue. And if they're doing anything that might even suggest that it's endangering the water table, there needs to be a complete halt of this activity, and we need to examine what's really going on here and examine what our relationship is with these people, because the government, they're just people. They're just people in expensive suits. They're no better than anybody else, and they're actually our employees, and more than that, they're actually public trustees. And this has been admitted by the Prime Minister herself.
But we've been programmed to not see them that way, to see them as authority figures.
Well, exactly, and we've been taught that if we want to get change from these people, we need to go down legal avenues. We need to work within the parameters that they provided for us to work within and operate within the legal system. But before we even approach the legal system, let's look at what our relationship with government is. And that is one of grantor, trustee and beneficiary. That's it. It's a trust agreement. It's a fiduciary trust. That's what your relationship with government is. And these people are in breach of trust. If there's any suggestion that the water table is being damaged, that's a breach of trust. If there's people in this country struggling under heavy taxes and struggling under a corrupt financial system, that's a breach of trust. We don't employ these people to do this. But they've taken control of the education system, so they've turned everything on its head, so that people believe the government are their rulers, and they believe that they have to operate within the legal parameters that are constructed by these people to protect themselves. And okay, we need some sort of a legal system. Fine, I can deal with that. But let's first deal with this trust agreement that exists between ourselves and government, because I believe that's where the solution lies. And I think that the catalyst that could bring it all together is coal seam gas, if people can become aware of the importance of this topic.
Well said. Santos.
Yep. Yeah, well said. I really don't need to add much more to that other than the fact that education, or rather enlightenment, and knowing who you are, etc., will reverse that sick situation today where we can take over and be the rulers of our own lives in freedom, and they can be the good little trustees that they're supposed to be, and we can pay them to administer the affairs properly and not be in breach of trust and just obey every little word that comes out of our mouths. But we have to be honourable, and responsible, and that's where we've defaulted. So they've taken advantage of that, We've been sleeping, really. We've got to grow up and show that we are responsible and conscious and aware, and then they don't have to baby us. I'm sure they're sick of babying us too, It takes a lot of time. Most of their life, these politicians, they're just running around doing all that political crap that they do. I feel sorry for them, They probably want a better life too.
I just spent a few days in Canberra, and I spent about 6.5 hours walking around the streets of Canberra by myself, and popping into one cafe after another, having coffee and listening to the conversations going on around me. And it's a very strange place. It's a very strange place. And, listening to just 9 out of 10 people were public servants. And the attitudes of these people, talk about asleep, but it's almost a pissing contest about whose public servant job is more important than the other person's public servant job. And I spent most of the afternoon just wanting to scream at people, but the energy of that place is very, very strange. I've never been anywhere quite like it. But in terms of what might wake people up, Santos, I know you deal a lot with people who are facing court and teaching them how to deal with things in court as well. And it's either because the banks are foreclosing on them, or they're got trumped up charges, driving offences, these kinds of things that take people through the court system. And in the process of facing the court system, if they go down the sort of sovereign road, they start to understand what the court system is really all about, the corruption that's in place. That is waking people up somewhat exponentially, really, because more and more people are being confronted with it. More and more people are having their houses foreclosed on. So this is a slower process of waking people up. I mean, I know there are thousands of people right now in this country who are dealing with their homes being foreclosed on, and they're dealing with it in a going down the strawman or sovereign or whatever way you want to call it movement down that road in order to defend it, who 12 months ago knew nothing about any of this, or even 6 months ago knew nothing about it. So we are having people wake up because they're no longer comfortable, because the system is actually closing in on them and tightening its rein. And that's the only thing that seems to kick Aussies out of this apathy, is when it comes to them and comes knocking on their door. But this is a slow process. For each person who's facing foreclosure and goes down this road and learns, they may wake up half a dozen of their family and friends. But it's not going to be enough to catalyse the nation as a whole. Do you see the coal seam gas, or is there something else you see that could do it? Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one, that one, because that's pretty obvious. That's destructive. It's a real hack job. That is real. That's just a bunch of companies trashing the planet, and people can see that. You don't need to be so enlightened. But if we keep as you said, in the last 12 months, people are much more switched on to how the courts are operating, etc. If we turn that Promethean fire on, which we all have, the knowledge of who we are, and be responsible as a human being. If we keep that on, we'll keep the wolves at bay. The wolves are the lawyers and the companies and the parasites that take advantage when there's no fire. If you're out in the jungle and you haven't got a big fire, eventually some animals will come around because they'll smell some food, But if you've got a big fire, they won't come around, So if we keep the fire, the Promethean fire burning, which we were supposed to from ages ago, these wolves, they're just ravenous wolves, the corporations, because there's money to be made and everybody wants their little bit, Once we do that and reactivate that fire and know who we are, it's very hard for these people to actually get away with crimes, because then they have to do lawyers have to do a lot more work. For instance, I'll give you an example of something that I'm going to be interviewing a guy called Boris on my last American Freedom Radio interview this weekend. Boris is one of these guys who talks a lot to another guy called Batman, and there's a community of these truthers, sovereigns, and they operate under what they call peaceful inhabitant. So if you go to court, you rock up as a peaceful inhabitant. Hey, I'm your friend. I'm here. I'm as a friend of the court, and then there's been a mistake. Someone's using my name as personal identification. Whoops, you're not supposed to do that. That makes it really difficult for a prosecutor to say, "Oh yeah, that's me. I'm the one who's used your all caps name as personal identification, and all of your your birth certificate and all your documents, they are non-identifiable documents. So what are they doing turning up in court, trying to pin your flesh and blood onto that corporate name? That's fraud. So it's going to be very hard for them to get past that hurdle. And that's what Boris is talking about. He's going to be talking about that. And all the successes they're having in court, they're just winning everything just by being a peaceful inhabitant, rocking up and saying, whoops, there's a mistake.
This in Australia? Sorry?
Yeah, in Australia it's being used too, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Mm.
But we've had so many different movements, different procedures, different technology to deal with courts, and it's been pretty slap hazard as to whether or not it works. And sometimes one particular technology might work the first half a dozen times and then ceases to work. That seems to be a bit of a trap as well. There's just so many ways of approaching the whole court structure. It's just, and people can spend 20 years and have done studying this stuff.
True. There are things I've tried in court that have failed. There's things that I've tried that have worked. Depends on it really depends on the case and how simple it is or how complex it is. But yes, that's true. There's many different approaches. Some work, some don't. And then when they do give you a little bit of a helping hand, because some judges are, they're really nice guys, and they do help you if they see that you're being honourable and you're trying and you're doing your best. They do help, but then the system closes down on that, and then they find a way to block that procedure or access. And then it's difficult for the next guys that come through, because it's the system, you see. The banksters are afraid that people will work out their system and be sovereign, stop using their money, so then their free ride ends. And it's going to end. So it's ending. Their ride is ending. The gravy train, it's finished. And Iceland, as you mentioned, is one, astounding example of this. These people are free, and from day to day, they are getting more and more rich. They are more and more sovereign. There's about 4 or 5% unemployment, and that's diminishing by the day. They are a real happy little country. There's no banks, no interference, and they are a model to the rest of the euro and the rest of the free world, and that's the way they're heading, Lisa. You look at there's the BRIC nations now: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. These nations have formed a sort of a bloc against the cabals now, and they're just sick of the war and the ravages and the crimes that they're getting up to. Most of South American countries, like Morales in Bolivia and Chavez in Venezuela, they might not be the sweetest, nicest guys in the world, but they sure are against the multinationals and the gringos, as they call them, that are destroying the planet. And so you've got all of South America now have sort of made a political statement, and they're advancing towards, closing in on this cabal of Swiss bankers and Vatican and Windsor Rothschild.
Do you think we have a chance of waking up a nation like Australia without the assistance of the mainstream media? Can we bypass it? I mean, for those who are, awake is such a strange term, but I guess we'll go with it. But for those who are awake, they either don't watch, read, or listen to mainstream media anyway. It's become redundant. But for the majority of the population, it's still where they believe the news is. It's still where they believe the truth about the state of the world is. So can we wake it up without the assistance of mainstream media?
It will be tricky, but there is a way to sort of co-opt their media as well and make it go towards our own destination. You see, ultimately all of these problems come because of the disempowerment of the people. And this is where coal seam gas comes into it. I mean, the court system, approaching it through the court system is a great idea, but even like you say, it's a hit and miss methodology, because it's a learning process for all of us. I mean, people have only recently become aware of the fictional nature of the legal system. People have only become aware that there's a difference between legal and lawful, Yeah. So, something that's legal may be not lawful at all, but it doesn't matter because we're taught to operate within the legal parameters. And people are learning this, and they're going into courts and they're attempting to attack the system or fight the system or go in and tell the judge he's got no jurisdiction, and all these approaches, which are, can inherently lead you into trouble. But even as you stumble through the process, once you get into that building and you're in all of these sacred geometric things and these resonances and these energy fields that all these sigils and things set up, it disempowers you by even being in there. Now, you get into a court and you get that feeling of, oh my God, I'm in court. There's an instant change of energy that happens in these buildings. So,
and they're very deliberately designed that way.
Oh, absolutely. So what you've got to do is find a way of empowering the people. And this is where I believe coal seam gas comes into it, because if you can empower the people into understanding that the relationship between themselves and government is a trust agreement, and give them the ability to stand up against things like coal seam gas, that makes it to the mainstream media. They can't help but report this stuff, And if you start building these strong communities and people start finding out who and what they are and realize the power that they have, because that's what's been taken from us. We've had the whole human experience reduced to commerce. We've had all of our power taken from us. We're given all of these goals that are completely unachievable. The television tells you you've got to do this and wear this and be like this and eat this and do all this sort of stuff in order to be this type of person. And it's something that you can never achieve because it's a fictional reality that they've created. So you spend your life struggling for this stuff and you end up dissatisfied and dejected and you never made it to where you thought you had to. So people are kept in this state for a reason. So they never really have time to even try to be self-empowered because they're too busy trying to be what the television tells them they have to be, So we have to find a way of shifting this paradigm within people. So we need to find a way of empowering people on the ground in something that they can understand. And water, we need water. So that's why I can see an opportunity in coal seam gas mining. But all of the research is good. I mean, we need to be questioning authority on every single level, questioning the authority of the councils, the authority of the government, because the government only has the power that we grant them. They're trustees. We're the beneficiaries of the power that we grant them. And yet they will do harm to us if we've breached one of their statutes when there's no injured party for the breach of that statute. So when they harm us, they put us in jail. Well, now there's an injured party. So they're the ones who've broken the law. How do they get the power to imprison me from the power that I give them? When I've done nothing but stand for the right of this earth, stand up for the water table or question authority where that questioning was due, and they believe that they can now hurt me for that, and yet they get that power from me because we are the nation. So you've got to get people to think this way. You've got to try to shift that paradigm within people. It's got to come down to self-empowerment, personal, individual self-empowerment. It has to start on the individual level. That's what I believe. And so every opportunity we've got to do it, I think we should take. And I think because coal seam gas is so prevalent in the media at the moment, and it's something they can understand, and it could be used to co-opt the media and get people empowered enough that they can stand in court and stand up against the legal system in their flesh, maybe it's an opportunity that's being brought here for a reason, All of these negative things, there's got to be positive results. I mean, this is how people wake up. This is why people are waking up, is because it's getting so negative. And I think we've got a great opportunity in this country because we've got less people in this entire country than they have in one city in the United States. So we can wake up a whole country, and that can send a shockwave around the world. The stuff that's come out about the Chappelle Corby case as well.
I was just going to ask you about Chappelle, yes.
Well, there's government corruption right there for you. If you want to know how corrupt these people actually are, go to expendable.tv and have a look at the movie Expendable and see what they did to Chappelle Corby. See how much the media and the government and the federal police and all these people are working in collusion to manufacture news and cover up their tracks. There's your corruption. And look what they're doing to the water table. They're willing to pollute the water table in order to support an economy.
But do you think that the documentary Expendable reached people that would normally be, the MSN?
Well, I think it did, because Chappelle Corby is a name that every Australian knows, and a lot of people watch that. And suddenly we saw all this stuff in the news about Chappelle Corby, clemency, and all this sort of stuff that they're trying to say she's okay now. And all of this is damage control from that film.
They haven't actually released it yet, though, have they?
No, of course they haven't released her. She's had 5 years off a sentence. All of the stuff that they've had there, oh, now I can have a baby, and all this stuff that was in New Idea and all these articles on her, it's all rubbish. She's still in jail. She's in jail till at least 2017, and she probably won't last that long, you know. She's in a pretty bad way, so we've got to keep on that.
It did seem like a direct result of the expendable. It was
Absolutely.
let's stop people from asking too many questions or looking too deeply.
Of course. So we're going to do something else on that soon. I'm actually working on a new one that we're going to put out, which will only be very short as well, but I want to get that out soon. But I've got so much on at the moment, it's been really difficult to find time to get anything done. But, I think we can do this. I think we can get through it. And the more negative it gets, the more positive it gets. That's the way it is. I'll tell you an interesting thing, too, as far as the consciousness shift. There's a lot of prophecies and legends, and you find that there's talk of this in American Indian traditions and in Mayan traditions, that the shift in consciousness that is supposed to happen starts on the east coast of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I was going to ask you about that too.
Well,
You're
yes,
jumping
yes.
ahead of me. That's great.
Oh, I must be reading your mind, but it
You are.
follows the song lines. See, the song lines, the first song was sung here, and it follows the song lines across the planet. And so we have an opportunity to do that. And I think Australians, once they do wake up, they will see what's going on and they will act. We're a pretty staunch nation. You know, we've been lulled into apathy, but you can't blame the people for being the way they are and thinking the way they are, because they've been trained to be that way. But once Australians get roused, you know, they're pretty staunch people. And I think that the destruction of the water table is something that could really, really do it, you know. So it's an opportunity, and I think we need to take it. But we've got to approach it in the right way. You know, we don't want violence. We don't want anything like that. We just need people to reclaim their power. You know, go on that road of self-discovery, stand in their flesh, realise that these people are simply public trustees, and we have a real opportunity for change here. And not only that, we have the ability to make the change by simply looking at things from the correct perspective.
Just diverging back onto the prophecies and what's coming out now about the Aboriginal dreaming. And you and I both know a gentleman called Stephen Strong, and I've spent a bit of time with Stephen lately and have been mentioning him and his work quite a bit in every interview that I've done. And he says the same thing, that, and not only that this awakening of consciousness is supposed to start on the east coast of Australia, but apparently every time throughout the eons, that's where the consciousness shift starts. That every time it's a process, and it always starts in the same place.
Yeah, well, see, this is the beginning of the song lines. This is the place of the first Borer ring, right here in Byron Bay where I live, about 3 or 4 minutes walk from my house.
It's the tail, isn't it, where you are?
It's the tail of the serpent. It's the place of the first Borer ring. There was actually a presentation, a sovereignty workshop that I attended, actually spoke at in the middle of last year, and Steve was at the same workshop. And he's done some wonderful work on Aboriginal origins. These are absolutely the original people on Earth. And so this is where the first songs were sung. So this is where the energy started. And a really interesting thing, when the British came here to Australia, when Cook came here, he was actually Lieutenant Cook when he came here to Australia. He wasn't Captain Cook. That happened later, when he messed up all his books and forged his... Anyway, it's another story. But anyway, he arrived at a place called Agnes Waters, and he sat there on the cliff top in a place called the Doorway of Destiny, and he tracked the movements of Venus for 3 days. And Venus is actually going through that same transitionary period at the moment, I think, the same thing that Cook did when he first came here.
Well, I've heard that's why he came here, was to track the transit of Venus.
Yeah, well, they came here to track the transit of Venus, and then they went and landed in South Australia. They stopped at Sydney on the way, and then they after they'd been here a little while, they got Aboriginal children and they dressed them up in Western clothes, and they brought them and they made them sing into the song lines and walk the song lines, singing Christian hymns and things. Mm-hmm. You can talk to Mark McMurtry about this.
Yep.
They actually made the children walk the song lines, and they sang Western law into the country. So they know how it works.
Yes. Yes.
They know how energy works, and they know the importance of these song lines and these energy grids, all the monuments they put everywhere, all the obelisks, all the stuff they do. It's all to do with all of this energy. And this is a lot of what keeps us in this, people locked in this apathetic and unconscious state. That's a whole very esoteric way of looking at it that a lot of people might have trouble dealing with, but it's true. I mean, you can't say that all of these things are on all these points because of pure coincidence. It simply isn't possible. So it's a fascinating story, and I think that we do have the ability to make that change. I think that's why I've been called to the area. There's certain other people that have been called to the area. Ken O'Keefe is coming out to visit us soon. He's going to be coming to the area, and a lot of people are being drawn here. And I think that we have a real opportunity for change here, and it all comes from self-empowerment. See, all the research that you do, all the rabbit holes you go down, ultimately what you're looking for is yourself. What you're looking for is the power that you hold. And we're being led away from that. And everything about this system leads us away from that. Everything about this system teaches us to look for remedy externally from ourselves. Yep. But you don't. All the remedy is in yourself, knowing that you are flesh and blood. You are living flesh. It's like Santos was saying before, who's made the claim against the name? They call your name. Yeah, I'm here regarding that matter. I'd like to know who's made the claim against the name. They're obviously exercising a right of ownership over the name. They're using it as personal identification. I'd like to know who they are. Oh, the state of New South Wales brought the claim against you. Well, that's not possible because the state of New South Wales is a dead entity. Somewhere there was a guy sitting in a building, sitting at a typewriter, and he wrote this form out. Bring him in here. I'd like to speak to him, please.
What you were saying earlier is touching on the fact that he's talking about the whole Messiah myth. I think it's probably one of the most dangerous and destructive things that humanity's ever created. And whatever form that Messiah takes, whether it's ETs or Jesus or, the white hats or whatever. But it's so disempowering, and it alleviates you of any responsibility whatsoever for anything that you may think, feel, or do.
Well, that's the problem, see, and that's where the solution lies. The solution lies in self-responsibility, because if people aren't prepared to be responsible for themselves, be self-empowered and be responsible for themselves, well, then they get ruled. And you can't blame the government for ruling you. If you're not prepared to stand in who and what you are and take responsibility for your actions, well, perhaps you need a ruler.
Well, there are no rulers if there are no followers.
Exactly. So that's where it all lies. And I don't want to hurt these people. I don't care what they did. I don't want to point the finger at anybody. I'm not interested in jailing anybody. I want them to come home with everybody else. But I want human consciousness to be free. All people need is self-responsibility and integrity, because integrity has no need of rules. And that's the approach we need to have. You've got to know who you are. When you have that self-discovery and that acceptance of yourself for your own perfection, the whole world changes. And when you can see other people as that as well, see other people as being as valid as you, that's it. All the barriers break down, and suddenly we don't even need government anymore. And if there's a problem in the world, well, all the problems that we face, they all come from governments. If they believe we're involved in any of their contracts and their birth certificates and all this stuff, well, show me proof of claim. I never agreed to any of it. But, if I do it on my own, I get in trouble. So I need the rest of the people to know this as well. And that's why I do what I do. That's why you do what you do. That's why Santos does what he does, because the people need this information. They need to know who and what they are, because until they know that, there's never going to be any change. No one's going to come and save you. You have to save yourself, and you're never going to be able to do that until you know what you are and who you are.
But isn't that what this 2012 phenomenon is all about? Is that rediscovery? Is that what you think it is?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for rediscovery, but people have to participate. There's too many people, like you say, they're waiting for the white hats. They're waiting for mass arrests. They're waiting for the Pleiadians to come. Someone's going to save me. There's going to be a cataclysm. I don't have to do anything, I don't have to participate in my own salvation. I don't have to find me. Someone else is going to find me. I'm just going to be saved. The white horses are going to come along and take me to heaven, and I'm going to be looked after by God, even though I completely neglected the world that I live in and myself,
Santos, have you looked into the Indigenous prophecies or the work that's starting to come out now from the Indigenous?
Probably more so the American Indigenous, like your Mayans and your Hopis and stuff like that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that stuff really intrigues me. Isn't it interesting that Indigenous people are really, really concerned and are focused on the spiritual ultimate outcome of this world. And the word world comes from whirling around, because everything spirals, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So so they know that this spiral has only got a certain duration. You know, this illusory world of Maya, it's got a certain duration. So have our physical bodies and whatnot. So everything sort of is born, grows, and then decays. So they were focused on that. Now, what the Western world wants to do is shift our focus from that. Oh, don't be distracted with, eschatology and end-time prophecies and where we're going and what the ultimate... Let's make some money. There's the stock market out there. There's trading. There's all sorts of things. You can buy properties and everything. Ownership. Own this. Own that. That's the devil. That's the evil. If we focus on the Aboriginal and Indigenous prophecies, we'll be more interested in our own dominion and the more important things that have true value, which will help us to identify or know who we are, and now connect with the oneness, with everything, rather than being, you see, education tends to compartmentalize us, you see, and we get sort of pigeonholed, and we get everything's sort of detached and separated and divided. You're a Protestant, you're a Catholic, you're white collar, blue collar, middle class, and all of that rubbish, for goodness sakes, Their wisdom helps one to see that we are all part of the one. Everything is syncretic. Everything is a oneness. And that division of that oneness is the only evil that exists.
You're reminding me of something I was thinking the other day, which is the divide and conquer. Because right now it seems like everyone's looking to try and find their place in this 2012 phenomenon. And we're doing it yet again with labels. I'm a crystal. I'm an indigo. I'm a star seed. I'm from the Pleiades. I'm from Arcturus. I'm from Sirius. And it's just it's the new age version of divide and conquer. And each of these groups claims they have the answer, and they're here. They've come here with a purpose to save the planet. And pitting each of these groups against one another. I mean, I had a roundtable discussion and with some people that was very open to start with, but what we ended up going down this road of talking about elders and bringing the elders, Western elders, back into the fold, because essentially they've not been encouraged to step into the role of eldership. They just become elderly and shuffled off into a home somewhere. But that the elders, Western elders, have as much to offer. I mean, not all of them, clearly. But there is wisdom and experience there that we're not taking advantage of. And the controversy that came up as a result, some scathing remarks that came up from people saying, well, I'm an indigo and I'm here to save the planet. And you can't, everyone claiming that their particular label was the ones who were going to do it or do all the work. And for me, it's just more manipulated divide and conquer. And, when it boils down to it, you're a human being on planet Earth right here, right now. And that should be what's important. That should be where your focus is. You're here in this form at this time for a reason. And honestly, get over it. If it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you come from the Pleiades or whether you want to label yourself a crystal, let's get past all of that and realize and remember why we're here, who we really are as humanity, and let's get on with it. Sorry,
Well,
that was.
it's absolutely. People need to discover themselves because that's what they are. They're just themselves, you know. And they need to see the validity in the other in people around them, and all the spiritual state of the consciousness is so important, you know. And even when you look at everything, look at sacred geometry and Fibonacci sequence. It's by marrying the present with the past that you create the future. So until mankind can embrace the old ways and not judge them, we need to marry them together. I mean, the traditional cultures around the planet are embracing us. They got their arms open, saying, "Come home," you know. And we can take our knowledge and our modernized consciousness and blend it with theirs to create a beautiful and harmonious future that will benefit all.
Yeah,
And
I think
they're
people get
asking us to do it.
scared. I think people get scared when they hear talk about the old ways. They think we're going to go back to running around naked in the bush.
No, 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 no. We've got to understand their concept of reality and their understanding of nature and their understanding of reality. So we're cut off from so much of it through all the pollutants that we consume, the fluoride and all of this sort of stuff. It's like I've said a few shows ago how animals will leave an area before a tsunami comes. And you'll find that the tribal people also leave the area 3 days before the tsunami comes. How do they know? Because they can read the energy field. They can use higher senses and they can read the energy field and they know that there's a change coming. See, we don't have that ability because of what we've had taken from us. So there's nothing wrong with technology at all. Nothing at all. But it's who's in control of the technology is the problem, because it can be used for great benefit or it can be used to control. And that's unfortunately what's happened. We've got great stuff here, great trinkets. Everyone thinks, oh, I got a great flat screen computer and I got an iPhone, so technology's great. Well, yeah, these are little toys they give you to play with, so it looks great. But there's all this other stuff they don't tell you about, and there's all these limitations that they put on people. They disconnect you from the oneness through all of their toxins and their energy fields and all the stuff, the bombardment that like brutalized. We've just been brutalized to be kept in this state. So they disconnect you from the oneness, and then they offer you their digital version of it that they control. And we think it's all really good. So, you know, if we were to marry our technological achievements with the traditional understandings of reality, think of the future that we could create. And that's what these cultures are saying. We need to do this. You know, humankind has a huge potential, and we have a huge opportunity to reach incredible heights. And we have an opportunity to do it. We have a responsibility to do it. And if we don't, you know, the program will simply run out. And that would be a great shame, because we do have so much potential. What do you think, Santos?
Yeah, spot on.
Well, Santos, from an astrological or astrotheological point of view, and from the work that you do, what do you think is happening, and what do you think is coming?
Well,
yeah, go for it. Sorry.
Okay. Well, all Gospels, mythologies, cosmology, they all have a component in there which is eschatology. Eschatology comes from a Greek word, eschatos, which means end time subject, or the end of the cycle, because the ancient wise conscious priesthoods that tabulated and encoded and sat down patiently and wrote all those mythologies with 7 levels of interpretation, so that only those with eyes that see and ears that hear can actually get the true gist of the deeper meanings of those wonderful, wonderful works. They always knew that eschatos, or eschatology, was important. The end time, the conclusion of the sum of everything, you know, of all the happenings. And in the Bible, this will be called, you know, Armageddon, or the harvest. There's always a harvesting of what has gone before. You see, you don't plant your garden so that you can watch them grow and then you just watch the tomatoes deteriorate and go back into the ground. You want to eat some of those fruits. So you grow for a purpose. And we've been seeded here from soul seeds, geometric patterns, sacred geometric patterns, which are the thoughts of the Creator. And we've been seeded on this planet. And there's a reason for it. and there's a harvest going on. There's a harvest of souls. So ones who have actually done the hard work and have ascended. Ascension is all about developing our cerebrospinal system and our senses and our intuition and our divine perception, etc. So we've all been given these beautiful bodies with which we can experience things through the five senses and gather information and supply those to the cerebrospinal system, which is the soul, basically. And the spinal cord has seven nerve plexuses on them, you see, from the base chakra to the pineal gland. These plexuses are very powerful magnetic centers along the cerebrospinal system. It's basically just your where the spirit is housed, just like a television. You turn the television on and a signal comes in to feed it with information so you can watch a movie. It's just digital information. So our cerebrospinal system does that. But what's happening is that the controllers know that the three bottom chakras are very pleasurable to the senses. You've got sex down there. You've got power and wealth, survival, and all of those things that are suited to our animal nature. You see, we have animal, human, and divine nature along the cerebrospinal system. The difference between heaven and hell is the distance or the difference and the distance of it is from the cranium to the bottom of the spinal cord. That's it. That's where heaven and hell are, you see. And so the controllers have forced us to think that sex is so important, and wealth and power and all of these things. What happens is that none of those other plexuses, chakras, are activated. And that's the higher self. The higher self, which is the one that is all-knowing, and unity is up there. Division is down. Unity is up, you see. So what they do is they keep us fighting around to survive and keep up with the Joneses, because it's embarrassing, when you've only got one SUV and the Joneses next door have got three. Different coloured ones, you see. So we feel this social pressure. There's this social component of our lives, So they do this deliberately, you see, and keep people panicking and in fear and everything like that. Once we lose that fear and stop playing their games, stop feeding their corporations, totally, like I'm living like a hermit. I don't own anything. I've got a computer. I look around. I've got a car that's falling to pieces. It makes so many noises and squeaks. But I'm happy. I've got a beautiful wife and a dog. I've got great family around me, great friends, and I'm as happy as Larry. I'm just. It's beautiful, and I do not support the system in any way at all. The only thing I really do that supports them is I buy petrol for my car because I've got to get from A to B, and that's about it. I don't have a license. I don't have all of their little things, I don't have a license to drive because I don't need it.
Well, I want to backtrack a second. You said this is the time of the harvest. What does that mean for you? What does that mean?
Well, it means that what we bring to the table, what we have inside, and what we stand for, and who we align ourselves with, what forces we align ourselves with right now, it's time to make a choice. These things will determine what the next stage is. Because as humans, we're in the middle kingdom, what's known in occult theology as the middle kingdom. We've passed through three lower kingdoms: mineral, vegetable, animal, and now we're in the human kingdom, and we're about to embrace the heroic. The heroic is what the Jews call, you see, the Jews say, from the mineral to the plant to the animal to the human to the Jew to God. And that is the true succession. That is the true path back to unconditioned consciousness. The only thing is, we're all confused about what it means to be a Jew. Some people think it's a race because the Rothschilds have been busy trying to paint them as a race. And then your Orthodox Zionist types, they want people to think that it's a religion. But the second book of Acts in the New Testament tells you who Jews are. They are reverent men from every nation under the sun. And I've just quoted the book of Acts. Because that's what a Jew is. It's a reverent, honourable human being who is a hero. Because they're not content with, foraging around and fighting for survival and fighting and arguing and doing the regular unconscious things that animals do. They have embraced their higher selves and they have lived a life of integrity. And this is what they bring to the table. This is where in the Gospels Jesus says that there's a master. He relates a parable about a king. And the king has to go abroad. He has to go to another country. So he gathers his servants, he gathers his 3 servants, and he says, look, here's a drachma for you, here's 2 for you, and here's 5 for you. Okay, I'm off, look after this money, and I'll be back one day. And so these are slaves that have been given talents. They've been given certain abilities and certain understandings and things that we have as human beings, you see. Now, when he comes back, the king finds that 2 of the slaves did nothing with the money because they were fearful. One says to him, "Oh, Lord, I was afraid of you. I know that you are an exacting king, and so I hid my money, and here it is. There you go, you can have it." And so he did nothing with that money. In other words, he did nothing with the love that he's got in his heart. For instance,
He did nothing with his gifts.
Yeah, with his gifts. We all have a certain amount of love. Everyone, even the darkest person, you'll find that they will be loving. But are they developing that love that can embrace everything that exists, or are they just sort of directing it to a couple of family members, to their children perhaps, few good friends, and everybody else they kill? So these are the talents that we've been given. So when the master comes back and he finds that the servant is still grumpy and not very loving and hasn't done much, he curses him and he says, "Go away. Give me that talent, I'll give it to the one who has more." So, and again in another passage it says that some will reap 30-fold, some 60-fold, some 90, and some 100. As you look around, you will see that some people are doing more with their talents and their abilities and virtues, and they're actually transmuting their vices into virtues, etc. This is what the harvest is all about. The kingdom of heavens is not something that will appear in the clouds, like Jesus says. Don't go looking for the kingdom of heavens. It will not come with striking observableness, for the kingdom of God is within. And so the kingdom of God is the temple of our bodies. As we continue to transmute our lead into gold, the gold is in the middle of the head. It's the optic thalamus. Once we return all of our beautiful nervous fluids, the beautiful oil in our bodies, which is called the Christ, once we raise that up the spinal cord, eventually it goes up until it reaches the very, very top of the spinal cord, touches the optic thalamus, illumination occurs, all of the dormant brain cells are reactivated, and we have kingdom. You see, Jesus also said, And by the way, for your listeners, just in case you think I'm a church-going type, Jesus is Hermes, is Plato, is Buddha, is all of the right brain, intuitive, divine mind speaking. That's what it is. We all have this ability to speak as Jesus did, or as Buddha did. And he said that when you see the sign of the Son of Man in the heavens, know that the kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of heavens is near.
What's the
Kingdom
sign of
heavens,
man? What is that sign of man?
Aquarius.
Okay.
Aquarius, yeah. When you see the sign of the Son of Man, because we go around, it takes 24,000 to 26,000 years for a precessional cycle. Whenever the Son of Man, which is Aquarius, turns up on March the 21st at the equinox, so it's easy to do. What you do, wait for March the 21st, go out at 6 a.m. because the sun will rise exactly at 6 a.m. on that day. And also on the other equinox, September the 21st through September the 23rd. It's only 2 days a year where the sun rises and sets at 6 a.m. What you do is you point your nose to the east and you look and you see what constellation is there, because the sun is always in the sign on the path of the ecliptic. The ecliptic runs straight through the zodiac belt. So it never, ever deviates from those 12 signs. That's Jesus and his 12 apostles. But when you see the sign of the Son of Man appearing, which is what you see that the stars of Aquarius are right there now at 6 a.m. and Pisces is above the horizon now. It's 30 degrees above, and then above that is Aries, because Aries used to occupy that space 4,000 years ago. And then Pisces, we've been in the age of Pisces, now it's the Son of Man. When you see that, his spiritual waters that come from his beautiful urn, he carries the waters and he's pouring the waters down, they are spiritual waters. The sign of Aquarius, the motto is, I know. Whereas the motto of the two fish is, I doubt, I believe. And that's the church of Jesus. And we've been in that church for 2,000 years, doubting and believing. But what's coming is knowing. And so that's what it means, the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven means that we will be ruling this planet from our heavenly thrones, which is the cranium, and not from the guts and from the solar plexus and from the feeling, emotional, sensational mind. That's all over. The days of the solar plexus, the animal mind, it's all over.
Well, this sort of ties back in with what we were talking about with the Indigenous of this country and the information that they're starting to share, which is now apparently, according to Stephen Strong, that whenever he's been told or given the okay to talk about their Dreamtime stories, that he's got to mention the Pleiades. And I know that we're closest to the Pleiades right now. We're in a special conjunction with the Pleiades at the moment, and their story is that that's where we came from, and that's what this time represents. That we are returning, or the Pleiadians will be returning, and we are returning to the Pleiadian way, which is the old way. So when they talk about returning to the old ways, it's about that way of living, and turning back on all of the senses that are currently switched off. There's an Egyptian mystery school that talks about us having, I think it's 320, but it may actually be more than that, senses in reality that have been switched down and dumbed down to now we're using 5 of them. And that's what this time is about. We return to the old ways and return to what they refer to as the Palladian way. And that they're actually going to come back.
Yep. Well, we're going to it. The Pleiades correspond to the pineal gland, and that's heaven for us. The Pleiades they are the shoulder of Taurus, the bull. And the head of the bull is the Hyades, which in the Bible is called Hades and hell. Now, Taurus, in between Taurus and Gemini, two neighbouring zodiacal signs, which correspond, by the way, in your body to your neck, and Gemini are the two arms. So in between your head and your torso, that's where the galactic equator runs. Now, opposite Taurus and Gemini is Scorpio and Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius's arrow is pointing towards the stinging tail of Scorpio. And there's only about 3 or 4 degrees that separates these two signs. And when you find them in the sky, once you find Scorpio, it's easy. It's the most brilliant constellation in the sky, and it looks like the letter J, or it looks just like a scorpion. You can see it. It's the only constellation out there. I've mapped the whole sky out, and there's only one constellation up there that looks like the animal that it portrays to be, and that's Scorpio. Now, when you identify Scorpio and Sagittarius, you'll see this little sort of empty. There's not many stars in between them, and what you're looking at is the center of our Milky Way galaxy. That's where all the stars in our galaxy come from, and they correspond with the bottom of the torso. Okay? Now, so if all the stars came from that general area, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and they're all, as our spiral galaxy just spins around and electrically expands, and all the stars go outward from that center, when you look to the Pleiades, you know that you're heading in that direction, because we are. We are 2/3 the way out from the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And the Pleiades and Taurus, they are way, way, way out. Way out in the far reaches and the extremities of the Milky Way galaxy. And we are projecting ourselves in that direction. So that's why we're looking to Orion. We always look to Orion. Orion is right there next to the Pleiades. Orion corresponds to the optic thalamus. Of course we're going up. We're going in that direction. That's the direction that we go, away from the center. And so that's why they've always looked to the Pleiades and said that this is the most sacred and blissful part of the skies, because we're moving at 108,000 miles a second in that direction. 108,000 miles per hour in that direction. That's the rate that the sun is moving, spiraling through the heavens. And if you look at the Pleiades, get your binoculars out and look at the Pleiades, you will notice that they look like a spiral. It's actually spiral, and there are 7 stars in it. The topmost star is Alcyone. And Alcyone has always been known to cosmologists as the seat of the throne of God. That's where God dwells, on that star. That's the central star of our system, you see. So it's a very important star. And what happens is all the other 6 stars, Merope, Maya, interesting, Maya, same spelling as the Mayan tribe down in Central America, and they insist that they come from this star. Now, at this point, I'll recommend a book from an Indigenous Indian from the Americas. I don't know whether he's Hopi or whatever, but let me see if I can find the book, because it explains that. All of this about this spiral of the Pleiades, and the bottom star, the 8th star in that spiral, is our sun.
Are you familiar with John Lamb Lash and his work?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Have you been following the I never can say this right, the magnetometer readings?
No.
Because what John Lamlash has said is that, and what he's been waiting for, essentially, for 30, 40 years while he's been doing this work, and he wasn't confident would happen, but what he worked out would need to happen is that Sophia, in his words, Earth, would need to make her correction and reconnect with the pleroma, the core of the galaxy, the core of the, not the core of the galaxy, the what's the other word for pleroma? Perhaps it's the central sun, is the other way of looking at it. And that again, I can't say it, magnetometer picked up, I think it was the 12th of June, what he believes is the signal. It was either 2 a.m. every day or 2 p.m. every day for 2 weeks. There was a signal picked up that was two-way from the Earth to the core and back again. And he was essentially drunk with joy and excitement at what was going on, because he wasn't confident that it would happen. And this, for him, absolutely marks the journey of correction. And the Pleiades are playing a big part in that. They're acting like a bit of a relay system.
Yeah, if the book that I was, I'm hoping interested people would like to read, it's called Touched by the Dragon's Breath. See, Aquarius brings the dragon's breath, otherwise known as the light of Sion, the photon belt, and it lasts for 2,000 years.
Well, that's interesting because every culture, and I'm sure Max can back me up on this too, in regards to the Indigenous here, but every culture around the world that I know of that has an ancient myth about this, or it's all waiting on the return of something, and that something is represented by a reptile of some description, whether it's a dragon or a snake with wings or a lizard, or it's a flying reptile.
Yep, because they all are. All the suns and stars that you see, they are all flying birds. They are winged discs, as the Egyptians portrayed the sun. Even the last chapter in the last book of the Old Testament of the Bible talks in Malachi. It says that the sun, S-U-N, will come with healing in its wings. Our sun, our sun is being upgraded. The DNA of our sun is being upgraded as we speak, and has been for a number of years now. It explains it in this book that I've just said, that Touched by the Dragon's Breath by Michael Harrington. On page 154, he shows the spiral of the Pleiades. On the top is Alcyone, then Merope, then Maya, Electra, Taygeta, Coeli, Atlas. Atlas is the last star, and then as the spiral goes around, there is our sun. And our sun is just about to cross over into the photon belt. And this is when we're going to see signs in the heavens. As it says in the Gospels, you will see signs in the heavens. The moon will be darkened, the sun will be darkened, the stars will fall from heaven. What it's talking about is we will see the heavens in a different way. We will see these winged serpents. We will see them.
This relates to the 3 days of darkness that some people are prophesying?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Mayans insist that there will be 72 hours of darkness, and then a new sun will be born. This has happened at least 4 times. The Egyptians have recorded it. When Herodotus went down in the 5th century BC, he spoke to the priests there in Heliopolis. They explained that every 12,000 years the sun rises in a different place, either in the east, and then it switches over to rising in the west, then it goes to the east, then back to the west, and they said that this happens every 12,000 years, and there's no need to be concerned because everything goes along as normal. There are a few interruptions and catastrophes and small things, but life goes on. And that's potentially what we could be looking at, massive, massive pole shift or reversal of spin of the Earth. What happens is the Earth slows down as it goes through the galactic plane, and it slows down and it stops. Pretty much like if you go to the equator and you have a bucket of water and you put a little hole in the middle at the bottom of the bucket, and you are, say, 10 inches below the equator, you'll find that the water there'll be a what do you call those little spirals in the water? God, I forgot the name. But anyway, the water will be leaking out of the bucket in a clockwise motion, right? But the moment you go to the equator, it stops. It stays still. But then 10 inches above the equator, it goes the other way, in the other direction. And this is what potentially happens with our sun and our Earth. As our Earth goes through that galactic equator, it stops spinning in one direction and then stops for 72 hours and then gathers momentum in the other direction. And so it spins, and then the sun rises in the west instead of the east.
If that happens slowly, then it could... No, it doesn't necessarily mean devastation, but if it happens very quickly, it will.
Yeah. Well, even slow, because what happens then is that one portion of the Earth is in darkness and another portion is in light, and that light can be very, very severe and hot, and the cold portion will be very. But look, all of these potentialities, they're nothing to be feared, because everything is going according to plan. Will go according to plan. It has in the past, and that's why we're here. We're not here by any mistake. It's all, the 9-month gestation period, for instance. It's not there's no baby fetus in the womb that's worrying about, oh God, the day of getting out of this belly, and then I'm going to be out in the real world in the air. They don't worry. They just come out and then grow, and that's what is happening now. We're in the belly, we're in a cocoon, we're waiting for the metamorphosis, the anamnesis, the apotheosis.
Well, speaking of a 9-month gestation period, do both of you remember the earthquake that we had in the northern part of South Australia in March?
Yeah.
Did you hear the story around that?
No.
Stephen Strong was contacted in February, a full month before that earthquake, by some Indigenous people telling him that it was coming. They told him the day and the place, and that it would be a 9-point something or other. Basically the same sort of thing that hit Japan. And that they were going to do something about it. So there was a group of elders, Indigenous elders, all women, some white elders from Australia, some North American elders, and I think even some Canadian Inuit elders. They flew over here and they brought their drums with them. And it was all done. This was all done by women only. And for 3 days and 3 nights, on a rotation process, where somebody was on duty the whole time, they sat on the spot of this earthquake and they drummed and they sang. And they drummed it down to a 5-point, whatever it turned out to be. And it was one of the signs that they'd been waiting for. And there was a lot of talk at the time, because it was a very shallow earthquake, that it was, HAARP or some other technology. But what they're saying is it wasn't a natural earthquake in the sense of what normally causes an earthquake, being plate movement. But it was by no means technology. That what it is there's whether it's the rainbow serpent or whether it's some other, I had a feeling it was some other kind of lizard creature, is waking up, and they're waiting for its return. And that day marked the beginning, and that we were now going to be, it marked the beginning of a 9-month gestation period which turned out to be the 23rd of December, will be the day of the birthing. And then there was a second sign they were waiting for, and this is why they're talking now, because their signs are coming up. The second sign was, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember it exactly, but there's a huge mine in Alice Springs, and there's apparently another lizard creature that lives under it. And when he spews red blood from his belly, it's when he's had enough. And about 3 or 4 weeks ago at that mine, a red dust fountain just came up out of nowhere and covered everything. And that was their sign. And apparently there's a huge contingent of Indigenous who are going there to shut that mine down. So it's because these signs are happening. And again, we're hearing about the return of, some kind of reptile. And we're in this gestation period. And again, we've got the date, in this case, it's the 23rd of December for the birthing.
Yeah, you find that these reptile tales, these are replete throughout Indigenous cultures all around the planet. It's very, very interesting.
But this is the first time I've heard the connection between that and the Pleiades itself.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Like I said, I love Stephen's work. And all of the Indigenous around Australia are saying that we have to do something now. We have to come back home. We all have to, we have to unite this consciousness. Everybody's saying it. So I believe that what happens really, I mean, it's all as it should be, but there's only a certain amount of consciousness that will kind of make it through the transition, And I think it's happened before. I think this is why we've seen species just suddenly disappear and new species have appeared, such as Neanderthal to Cro-Magnon. There's no transition. Suddenly Cro-Magnon's there and Neanderthal's gone. And the same thing happened with Cro-Magnon, and then Homo sapien came along, and Homo sapiens sapien came along, and each species replaces the one before it. And I think that's what's happening here again. I think we're about to go through one of these transitional periods. And I think that there's certain people that won't make it. There's certain people that will. And I think that the powers that be are attempting to manipulate this. This is where the transhumanist agenda comes in. This is where all the GM food comes in. They're trying to keep as many people locked into this reality as possible because they like that control.
Absolutely.
All the Indigenous cultures are saying, well, look, it's time to embrace your brothers, and it's time for you to know who and what you are so you can move forward in the transition the way it's supposed to go. And that'll be what people call ascension, Well,
interesting that you say that's only, that's likely that certain consciousness will make it through, because I've been notified by both someone in the Victorian Police Department as well as at the federal level talking about the suicide rates and how they have just exponentially gone off the charts over the last 18 months. And that the police departments all around the country are under strict orders not to talk about how many people are jumping in front of trains, jumping in front of trains and off bridges. And that a lot of our traffic disruptions on highways are clean-up jobs, not roadworks, and being disguised as roadworks, that because the numbers are just so phenomenal. And none of it's getting any media attention whatsoever, of course, but I mean, is that a reaction to not coping with these new energies, or?
Human consciousness has really been brutalised, and you've got a lot of young kids being born into the world today, like in the last 20, 30 years, kids that are, they're a lot more awake, and they're a lot more, people would call them indigos or whatever, but they're a lot more conscious, and they get into this world and they get squashed into a box. And they're like I said, they're given all of these yardsticks to measure themselves up by. The television and our whole society gives people a set of goals that they need to achieve in their life, and they tell them if you buy this product and you do this and you do that, it's going to be an easy step to become what you want. And what they're presenting that as is a goal that is essentially unachievable. So people are going through life feeling very, very dejected. They're working very hard and they're getting nowhere, and they're going, what is all this about? And they're just bailing out, And a lot of, you'll find a lot of people with disabilities and things suiciding and stuff as well. A lot of people with Down syndrome and all this sort of stuff. And I think a lot of these are just beautiful people that are choosing to opt out. So I think there's two sides to it,
I'm surprised to hear that. I mean, Downs people are usually just the most beautiful, open, loving, happy individuals.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I've found that up on the coast here and in Brisbane, there's been certain people that have disabilities that are on medication and receiving care all the time that are just bailing out, and so there's a lot of souls that are choosing to opt out at this particular time. Perhaps they're making the transition early, perhaps they're being called, but perhaps there's a lot of other people that are simply they've been too boxed in by this society, and they're just bailing out. They don't want to know about it. A lot of people can't handle the energy shift that's going on, probably, because it is palpable. I mean, you can feel it. You really can, and they're really clamping it down as well. I mean, all the new legislation they're bringing in, all the stuff that Gillard government's doing, and the cameras they want to put in here in Byron Bay, and everything they're doing to try to squash it down as much as possible and maintain this control. New microwave towers going in all over the place when we don't need them. Feed people and keep them in this electromagnetic, this soup that they just swim around in. So it's a very interesting period.
I mean, because you're living in what is essentially thought of as Australia's hippie capital, and certainly more awake than a lot of areas, how can I put this? Are the people in your area awake predominantly to a spiritual revolution, or are they awake to a political revolution, or is there a particular theme or focus in that area?
Well, look, the people around here, unfortunately, there's very few people who are actually awake. There's people who have certain spiritual understandings, but they're kept locked within the confines of the New Age movement, which is essentially spiritual narcissism. And they believe that if they don't pay attention to the world around them, then the world will change. And when 2012, when December 21st gets here, they're all going to suddenly manifest a new reality. So they're just not applying themselves to the world around them, unfortunately. And a lot of them are like this. It's a lot of really false spiritualism, because people pretend to be really loving, but they're actually not. A lot of people, they're like I said, it's just spiritual narcissism. They're all very love and light and all very co-creation, but there's always a higher agenda, and there's often an invalidation of other people. Very, very few people see each other as themselves and treat each other as themselves. I've always said that all you've really got to do to succeed in life is follow the 4 rules of Dharma, do the right thing at the right time in the right way for the right reason, and make sure you're always operating in service to creation, and you'll find that your life just naturally works. It just all falls into place, and I'm living proof that it does.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of people don't get that. They're looking for salvation in a book. They're looking for it by improving themselves, but they're not realizing that there's only one self, and we're all part of the self, and you'll never improve the self while you ignore the plight of others, And it's kind of difficult to get that understanding into a lot of people. I mean, there are some people around here that are awake. They're all like big on organic food, all that sort of stuff. We haven't got fluoride in the water around here because the people won't allow it, and there's a lot of that. But again, it's kind of this hippie new age mentality. So there isn't a lot of political awareness. People who are spiritually aware don't want to know about political awareness. And so they're all subservient to the same system that enslaves everybody else, basically.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's the two don't go hand in hand very often. I mean, there's a saying about Christians going to church and worshipping a homeless man on Sunday, and then, walking over them in the street every other day of the week.
Well, that's absolutely true. Christianity's got some beautiful, the Christian teachings have got some beautiful teachings, but Christianity doesn't really have much to do with it at all. And people aren't applying themselves to the world around them, unfortunately. See, it all comes down to self-empowerment. See, people may have this new name that they've given themselves, and they wear beads and ribbons and bells, and they feel like they're being themselves, but they're still subservient to a system because the system demands it. And when the government says jump, they say how high, We've got to understand what's going on here, and we've got to take self-responsibility and self-empowerment back. And really the only way we're going to get it is when we start respecting each other. We live in these divided societies, divided communities. We're trained to think this way about other people. And once we can break down that barrier and we can treat other people around us as valid, we have the power to stand up against anything the system will do. And really, I mean, it's all going to go either one way or the other. I mean, part of this consciousness will go to where it's supposed to go, and the rest of it will simply get recycled. But it would be nice to take as many people on that wonderful path as possible. And that's what I believe the goal of all of us ultimately is to wake up as much of that consciousness as possible to the power and the beauty that they hold, because that's the real opportunity for change, and that's the real opportunity for an evolution of this consciousness into a new reality that we can all co-create together.
Yeah, well said, Max. It is all about and self-empowerment. What the churches are trying to do, I just had a thought when you mentioned that, because I know how they work. I was a Jehovah's Witness for 20 years, or well, longer than that.
Religions are very insidious, aren't they? Because they teach you all this empowerment, but then they train you to make it external and give it away to somebody else.
Exactly. That's the thing. And the New World Order also uses the same tricks. You know, the New World Order people are also they're teaching. Their motto is, to do everything for the global community, for the betterment. This is for the good of the all rather than the individual good. We've got these great motives of, because they know that there's only a handful of families behind the UN and the WHO and the World Bank and the IMF, the Bilderbergers. They know that it's just a couple of families that run the whole thing. So it's for their good. It's not for the true good of the all. And so this is why it must start with the individuals, acquiring and seeing their own divinity first. And then automatically that will be good for all.
Well, absolutely. See, the thing is good for all in their model is good for the corporate system. See, the whole reality they've imposed upon human consciousness is that of commerce. There's nothing wrong with commerce. I mean, we all need to be able to trade with each other. But when the whole human experience is reduced to commerce, so it's the basis of everything, well, that's the problem, because it's a corporate system. And that's what the New World Order is. It's a global corporation. Yeah. And you look at how a corporation functions, well, it's a psychopath. And it's always about the bottom line, and it's always about maximizing profits. So therefore, the human race becomes expendable. So that's the problem with their version of the global family, is that it's all based on corporate commerce. That's the problem.
I don't know where else to go. I feel like we've covered so much ground.
Well, good discussion. It is a good discussion. I think this is all opportunity, Lisa. I really think that everything we've been given here is opportunity. And I really don't think we've ever had a better opportunity, because all through human history we've wanted freedom, but we've never really known what freedom is. We've always equated freedom with freedom of choice. But freedom is a self-awareness and self-empowerment.
But we aren't even on the same page about what that means, for the most part.
No. See, people don't know what freedom is. They think it's freedom of choice. I'm free to get whatever job I want, or buy whatever car I want, or look the way I want. I can get my hair dyed. I can do whatever I want. I'm free. I can go. I'm
free to choose which bank I get my loan from.
Yeah, all of that sort of stuff. And now I don't even get me started on banks and loans. But, no bank ever loaned anybody anything.
Exactly.
But, see, we don't know what freedom is, but freedom is self-responsibility. That's what freedom is, being completely responsible for yourself and seeing the validity in yourself and the validity in others. That is what freedom is. And we, for the first time in history, are becoming aware of that. And that's what happens at the end of this cycle. See, when these cycles get to the end, it basically you've got the sum total of what consciousness has gathered to itself, what it's found out up to that point. And this is the first time in history we've ever been aware enough of ourselves to really be able to attain true freedom. Because all we've ever had before is we'll pull one tyrant down, we'll put another one up. We replace our parents. Every time we've had a revolution in the past, all we've done is get new parents,
Well, not just new parents, but one psychopathic set of parents for another psychopathic set of parents.
Of course, because it's a psychopathic system. And of course it is, because we're never prepared to take responsibility for ourselves, and so we get ruled, So this is the first time in history when we're now seeing the result of that. We're seeing the result of that failure to take responsibility for ourselves. And this has all stemmed from a failure to know ourselves and become aware of ourselves. And it's the first time in history we've had this opportunity. Well, the first time in recorded history, which I would suggest happens at the end of every 26,000 year cycle. I think we've done this many times, as Santos said, and as all the Indigenous cultures will tell you, I think we've done this many, many times. And so it's what we do with that information now. And that's why I believe a lot of people won't make it. And that's okay. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I love them, and I'd like to, as much of this consciousness to make it through as possible. But I believe we will make it through. This is simply how we did it. And, it's a hell of a time to be alive, I think.
Yeah, that's for sure. Absolutely. And bringing it back to Australia once again, sitting here on the arse end of the world, as we often think we are, and looking out at what's going on, where do you think... I mean, it certainly looks like the beast resides in the US, that the heart of the beast, that's where it is. Do you think it's... And it seems to be that taking down the US is the cabal's number one priority, because I think they think that if that goes first, the rest just follow like dominoes. So does a real revolution have to take place there first?
Well, I don't personally think a revolution as far as civil war or violent revolution
no, I don't necessarily a violent one.
Doesn't have to take place anywhere. I think
a spiritual one, at least.
It would be good if it took place in America, but I don't think there's any possibility of that, because America's a very adolescent culture. And there's a lot of awake people in America, but there's a lot of asleep people as well. America's got a population like 300 million or something. I mean, there's a lot of people there. And like I said, all the prophecies and all the legends say it will start here. And I think it has to start here, because here's the beginning of the songlines.
What do you think that means and looks like?
The revolution here, it's a revolution of consciousness. It's the awareness of the people. Once people wake up to who and what they are, and I think that it's going to be taken to a bit of a higher level this year. I think we're going to see something happen this year, which to start bringing a lot of this information into the mainstream. I really do.
I know that when Stephen Strong brings out his next batch of information, he's already got 3 books out that are just mind-blowing. But I know what's about to come. And once he goes public with that, it's going to turn everything upside down.
Well, see, everybody's got to realise the power that they've got. You know, they really do. It's hard to break down the racial barriers, even trying to bring the white people this information, you know, that Steve's putting out, because a lot of them just, you know, they're just caught in these bubbles of society. So I think that because we've got such a low population here, see, that's the key. That's why I keep bringing it back to Australia, because we've got such a low population. We've got 22 million people. So we have more opportunity to wake up Australia than we can to wake up one city in the United States. And if you wake up Australia, it's got a reasonable sort of a standing on the global stage. It'll be like waking up Iceland, only bigger. You know what I mean? And if the world can look and suddenly say, hey, look what the Australians just did. They just held their government in breach of trust and alleviated all the problems that they face. Wow, and help the people realise that that's what's going on. See, this whole system that enslaves everyone, all this military and economic and social and legal structure of our whole societies, it's all fiction. It's just fiction, the whole lot. We made it up. It only exists on paper. You know, what is actually real is the people of this planet and the planet that we live on. And we have to understand that these governments are simply public trustees. That's the solution. It really is. And I think we have an opportunity to do that in this country. And if the people of Australia can grasp this, that the only reason they are in a state of shortage is because of the actions of their government, we can change the world. We can send a shockwave around the planet. We really can. And if you think about it, like Australia is a huge country. We've got a massive amount of resources. And this is something that anybody from the suburbs can even comprehend. You know, it doesn't matter how asleep you are. All you got to do is look at the amount of resources we have in this country and the low population we have in this country and realise that this is a Commonwealth country. So we have Commonwealth. So with such a huge amount of resources and with such a low population, why isn't our share of the Commonwealth astronomical? Why don't we have the highest standard of living in the world because we've got one of the lowest populations in the world.
Oh yeah, we absolutely should. The numbers are just not adding up.
Absolutely. The fact that we have such a low population and we are struggling so much, we have one of the, we're paying twice as much as what Americans pay for things, for God's sake. And we got 10 times the resources they've got, and we got a tenth of the population, well, even less than a tenth. So why don't we have one of the highest standards of living in the world? The reason we don't is because the government's stealing all the resources from the people. And who is the government? Well, they're trustees that hold the Commonwealth in trust for us. We are the nation. Just trying to crack that paradigm with people and get that into people's heads. Once Australians stand back and realise this is what's going on, they'll be pretty irate. And they'll stand up and do the right thing. I really believe they will. And like I said, I don't want to jail these people. I don't want to jail Gillard or Howard or any of these people. I just want them to go away. Just get down.
Just go away.
Put some honest people. We'll put some honest people in place who are going to run the country properly.
So what do you think it's going to take? Do you think it's going to take a legal action?
Well, there's no point doing legal action because they created the legal system. It'd take an action in a court of equity. Once people understand this is a trust agreement, it's all
those even exist anymore?
It's got to be done in trust. It's all got to be put back into trust because that's where the remedy lies. You won't find any remedy in no legal remedy. There's no point taking these people to a court of law, getting lawyers in there who are sworn to serve the Bar Association anyway, and it's in the system that they created to protect themselves. It just doesn't work. So you've got to put it all back into trust. It's got to be done in a court of special equity, international court of special equity, or anything. Just standing up and saying, hey, show me that you're not in breach of trust. I'm accusing you of being in breach of trust because I'm in hardship. Show me that you're wrong. If the whole nation stands up and says, hey, we think you're in breach of trust, show us that you're not, because we can show you that you are simply by looking at the state of the country. What defence do these people have? But the people have to be aware of it. You need public awareness. You need a huge public outcry, But again, people are going to have a tendency to get violent. So you're not going to have the right type of outcry until the people are empowered and know who and what they are and know that they don't have to be violent. All they've got to do is stand in their flesh and realise that these are just people. They're just people. They're just public trustees, and we don't need to go along with anything they tell us to do. It's all fiction, all of it, It's just difficult to shift that paradigm in people. So that's what I think coal seam gas is about, and that's why I try to tell people gingerly about trust law and try to, politely and calmly explain to them the power that they have constantly on the radio shows, because I really think that's where the remedy lies. And I think we have an opportunity to do it in this country, and we need to embrace it. And I think this is the only country that it will be done because of the size of the country geographically and because of the low population that we have, I'd love to wake up America, but like I said, it's an adolescent culture. The Americans have been brutalized, absolutely brutalized, And I do want to bring America down, but see, they created America to do exactly what it's doing. It's the military arm of the three city-states. They created it to go out and infect the rest of the world with its culture and then to destroy it. That's what it's all about. The whole thing's planned. It's Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, and Atlantis has to be destroyed, And but Atlantis was used to infect the rest of the world. So this is exactly what they're doing. It's doing exactly what it's created to do.
Santos, just a quick practical question. You said you don't have a driver's license. I went down that road, and unsuccessfully. How do you get away with it? Have you been pulled over?
I just tell them that that I don't own any of their property. That's their property. I'm travelling. And they just depends on who they are and their mood and how I deal with them. But of course, then they're going to send me something in the mail which I don't open. I just ignore everything that comes in the mail. I don't want it. I want what I want, not what they want. So it doesn't matter to me. And every now and then I'll get some papers from them telling me that I'm in trouble, according to them. But if they're keen enough to or dumb enough to bring me into court and lose, well, that's up to them because they know they're going to, because of the way I talk to them. Then I'm not, I'm going to be an easy pushover.
Okay, so you're not actually avoiding having to deal with them, and because I know that the one particular police officer that I dealt with actually said to me on the side of the road, "You're probably right, but I have to give you this anyway." It was the fine. And I felt like I had an effect on him. I felt like this guy was actually going to go home and maybe read something. It was interesting.
Mm.
But yes, there's no getting away with actually having to deal with the cops on the side of the road, unfortunately.
No. But just, you know, I haven't yet had an opportunity to be really nice to policemen. I've always been very, very aggressive, and unfortunately, that's not the right way to go. But every time I've had to do with policemen, it's been very aggressive. But I'm gonna be doing the peaceful inhabitant stuff from now on. And what can I do to help, officer? You know, I respect the fact that you're doing a really tough job. You know, when you're in your real jurisdiction, you have to protect people, and that's a big, hard job. But when you're a policy officer, you don't get any respect from me, man, because, you know, you need to love humanity and put that first before your job and its policies. I'm not going to be respecting any of your policies, but I won't say that. You know, that'll be my attitude. But I'll be nice to them, and I'll be peaceful and loving. Love. But they will know that if they, and I make it known to them that if they use that name to identify my flesh and blood, that's fraud, and you're going to be in big trouble.
Okay. Well, where can people go to find out more about that particular technology?
Well, I've got an email just sitting on, you know, like a template that are just sitting with all the best remedies from guys like Boris, Batman, and a mixture. I don't just stick to one school, you know, for dealing with problems. But I've got a whole bunch of the best links, Ben Lowry, guys like that, you know, and Max's stuff, everything. I'll just have like about 10 to 20 video links and etc. And I just flick those over to people because I get contacted at least 10 times a day about sovereign matters and law matters, and I just say, look, this is the best way that I can think of going forward. Peaceful inhabitants, here's some links, check out these guys, and usually people come back to me and say thank you because the remedies worked, or they write back to me saying, great, now I understand how it all works. And so
why don't you post that somewhere, though, so you haven't got to flick it out to people 10 times a day?
Yep, true. Well, I need to get myself organised. A lot of things.
Actually, if you forward it to me, I'll put it up on my website.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. Because I know that there'll be people listening that will want it, for sure.
Yep.
Because it is one area that people are waking up. So let's give them the information.
Let's.
Yes,
yep.
Let's. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We've been talking for just about 2 hours. It's been a great conversation. Thank you so much to both of you. We've covered a lot of different ground. That's what I wanted to ask you, actually, Santos. Now I've just remembered. Because when you were talking before, it reminded me of the story of Hypatia, which I'm sure you're very familiar with.
Yes.
Yes. Have you seen the film Agora?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I watched it recently.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrifying and horrific. And one of the things that stood out for me in that film was that there is no religious institution on this planet that I'm aware of that doesn't have a bloody and violent history. Yep. And the early days of the Christian movement was just horrific.
Mm.
And the cop-out, you know, that came through over and over again was, I think I heard you say this recently, Max, ask yourself what Jesus would do. Was that you that said that? We should have a what would Jesus do website?
Yeah, I said that at some stage. I said that. Remember saying that on one show.
Well, their answer, when confronted with what would Jesus do in this circumstance, he would forgive, he would love, Well, but that was Jesus, and he's God, and we can't be expected to be that good. So I can kill, I can hate, I can do those things because I'm not as good as Jesus.
And it doesn't matter. I can do that anyway because he died for me, so I could do this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what twisted logic is that?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's just, yeah.
So, what would Jesus do? Anyway, thank you very much, guys. I've enjoyed this immensely.
Oh,
My
thanks,
pleasure.
Lisa. Thanks,
My
Max.
pleasure, Lisa.